Tom, thank you for everything that you said, everything that you've done. Your service to this country. And serving at a time where, let's be honest, it wasn't easy. I think, unlike your older brothers and your dad, when you came back to this country, and when your generation came back to this country from service, at best met with indifference or shrugs, no ticker tape parade, no thank you for your service, no pat on the back. And at worst, there was some real scorn and some misplaced anger at those who went and did exactly what this country told them to do. But what I've noticed about Tom and his generation, and Syria and Yemen and all the places that we send our young women and men to these days, it's the Vietnam veteran who is up there in front, making sure that they're treated far better than they were when they came back, making sure that they get the gratitude, the services, the care that they've earned and that they do. And so I know we sometimes call the World War II generation the greatest generation, and they were amazing. But I am so grateful for you and impressed at your generation, everything that you have done for this country. So thank you for your service in so many ways, including running for office. I want to thank Claudine, who was instrumental in finding this space and helping us to come together and hosted us last time that we were in Abilene. We're grateful to you, Claudine. Thank you for bringing us together today as well. Out here freely of our own volition. Listen to the candidates speak, and then the candidate's going to turn around and look to serve in this position of public trust that does not belong to him or to his family or to the party, but to the people of Texas. This is a very rare and exceptional thing over the course of human history. Most of our predecessors on this planet could not figure out 6 years into we're still going under some significant strain and some real attacks right now. There's who can vote. And listen, nowhere better than here, and no forum like a Veterans Town Hall to remind us that in the primary that we just held in March, there was a 95-year-old World War II veteran who put his life on the line to fight fascism overseas, to defend democracy at home, who was denied the right to vote in Texas not once, but 3 times. That's how often his mail-by-ballot request was rejected by the state, because the new rules of the road signed into law by Greg Abbott last year say that if you want to vote by mail, including during a pandemic that has carried off 87,000 of your fellow Texans, you must use the form of ID with which you first registered to vote, even if you first registered to vote back in 1938. And we can forgive the guy for not remembering which form of ID he used more than 70 years ago. But that's the standard that we held him to. If anyone among us has deserved the right to vote, it is that guy and anyone who's worn the uniform of this country. But this democracy is not gone yet, and I don't think it's going anywhere if any of us have anything to do about it. And that's what this campaign is about. It's not about Democrats, although I love you. It's not about Republicans either, although I'm glad that you're here as well, nor is it about independents. It's about Americans, it's about Texans, it's about finding out how we come together to do the big things that should define us as Texans. Not our fears, not the people that we're supposed to be afraid of, not being pitted against one another on these culture war issues, but the big things that we can only do when we come together. And I can think of no bigger thing than being there to fulfill our end of the bargain for those women and men who serve this country in uniform, who said, I will give my life willingly to the people of the United States of America because I swore an oath not to a president or a party or a person, but to the Constitution and to this form of government and to this democracy. We got to make sure that this works and that we fulfill our end of the deal. And try as hard as some here may be doing to fulfill that, we as Texans, we as a state, are not getting that done yet. And I want to share with you some ideas that I picked up from listening to veterans across the state of Texas. Ideas that they have that will make this a better state for military service members to retire in after their 20 years, or veterans who've given 18 months, or 3 years, or 7 years, or 9 years, after they transition into civilian life, we want them to choose the state of Texas. After their service at Dias, we want them to settle right here in Abilene, as many of you have already. So what can we do? Here are just 3 ideas out of 1,000, and I hope there are more that come back to me from you right now. But this is what I've been hearing across the state. Idea number 1. We have thousands of veterans who serve this country right here in the state of Texas who will be sleeping on the streets tonight, without a roof over their head, without a steady meal to fill their belly, without the common dignity of having an address that they can give to a bank or an employer or a school that they want to attend. Now, there's no excuse in terms of resources. We're the 9th largest economy on the planet here in Texas, and we're situated in the wealthiest, most powerful country the world has ever known. Made possible, by the way, by those men and women who have served this country in uniform. That's how we got to where we are right now. So how are we going to fix this and make sure that those who are on the streets today can be in a home tomorrow? 3 things that I think we can do as Texans. 1, we need more housing in this state. And I propose starting a veterans land bank right here in the state of Texas, where we acquire land and property, bring it up to code, make sure that it is truly livable in a place that can be filled with not just that veteran and her family, but the pride that we all feel in the place that we call home, where we lay our head. We have the resources to do it. We just lack the political will in the past. As governor, I want to make sure that we bring people together to get that done. Second thing that we'll do related to that in ending veterans homelessness in Texas is ensuring that we have full wraparound services for every veteran who needs that home. Because in addition to a roof over their head, they will need mental health care, primary health care in some cases. They'll need job and career counseling. They may need access to higher education. There may be some obstacle, despite Hazelwood and the post 9/11 GI Bill that's in their way right now. We want to make sure that we take all that stuff out of their path so they can get fully on their feet and start moving ahead. And then the third and last thing related to housing is doing something about our property taxes in the state of Texas. When you opened your appraisal for your home, I hope you were sitting down. We've seen them go up 30, 40, 50% year over year in the state of Texas. And at a time where the state is not paying its fair share of funding for schools and state mandated services and is asking you at the local level to bear the burden of that, you're going to see your property taxes go through the roof as well. As we know, those veterans who have a 100% service-connected disability rating have some relief from property taxes, and for that, we are grateful. And thanks to this ballot proposition that I hope we all voted for, so will their families. But if you have something less than 100% disability rating, then you have very little, if no, relief at all. And what I know from listening to veterans who've gone through that service-connected disability rating process is there's an adage, deny until you die. Very, very hard for some to prove their service connection to their disability, to say, listen, my knees are blown out because I've been jumping out of airplanes for the last 8 years. My back is broken because the Humvee that I was in was blown up and I was shot into the sky 30 feet. I have injuries inside of me that you cannot see, but you got to take my word for it. It is very hard for me to go into work or to be out in the public or to come to a meeting like this. In other words, I cannot earn the income that I otherwise would have been able to count on because of my service to this country. And the deal that we made with that person when they first enlisted is we're going to be there for you then. Well, on these property taxes, we are pricing and taxing veterans out of their homes. So one of the things that I'm going to propose to the legislature as governor is that we have property tax relief for any veteran with any level of disability rating, because we cannot count on that rating system to fully reflect the damage done to that person who served this country. Those three things, ensuring that we have the housing and the land, full wraparound services, and then doing something about property taxes in Texas, lead me to believe that in the first year of my administration, we can get to functional zero in terms of veterans homelessness in the state of Texas. So much else becomes possible when you have a house. As I've learned from listening to those who are experiencing homelessness, asking somebody, hey, why is it so hard for you to get a job? Very naive question coming from me who's always had a home and been able to count on that roof over my head. And hear from that person, you know, Beto, when you can't take a shower, when you're wearing the same dirty, soiled clothes day after day, when you don't have a permanent address that you can tell that employer that they can send your check to or that they can do a follow-up reference on, it's pretty damn hard to get a job. And everything else flows from that as well. So that's why I began with housing for those experiencing homelessness. Second big issue, super important and near and dear to my heart, and that is reducing veteran suicide in the state of Texas. It is way too high right now, and the conservative estimate is 18 to 22 veterans take their lives in this country, in this state, each day, every day in the United States of America. Among some veterans, including those who have an other than honorable discharge or different discharge statuses, the rate is even higher. This does not have to be their future or their fortune or their fate. We can do something about this. And here are three things that I think we can do to improve the outcomes for veterans when it comes to mental health. Number one, though the Texas Veterans Commission is doing its level best to connect these veterans with care to the VA, they just do not have the capacity to get the job done. So I propose that the Health and Human Services Commission, a much larger, better funded agency with the manpower, the resources, and the capacity, do intake and case management for veterans to connect them with the care, either at a VA, a CBOC, a private clinic using VA federal dollars to connect that veteran with the care, and then to stay on it to make sure that there's continuity and consistency and positive outcomes for that veteran. That's using state resources to make sure that we do the job for veterans in this state. Second thing that I think we can do on mental health is legalize marijuana in the state of Texas. Seems like from your response, this is self-evident about why this is a positive. Let me just share this one story. Holding a Veterans Town Hall like this when I was a member of Congress, serving on the House Veterans Affairs Committee, a gentleman approached the microphone, told me that he'd served this country in Iraq, came back, was prescribed an opioid at the VA for his symptoms related to traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder. He became addicted to that opioid. And the VA, as only the VA can, decided that they would meet this challenge of his addiction by cutting him off cold turkey with no alternative medication or therapy involved. Just good luck, buddy, you're on your own. So this guy comes to the mic at this town hall in El Paso, Texas, and tells me and everyone in attendance that he's buying heroin on the streets of El Paso. It is the only way he can medicate himself and get well enough to be able to continue to live. Now this guy is a criminal in the eyes of the law for doing this, but he's doing only what he can do to stay okay. What I've heard from other veterans is if I could be prescribed cannabis, marijuana, weed, that would allow me to address my symptoms without becoming addicted. It allows me to sleep at night. It allows me to have an appetite again. It makes life worth living for me. But right now, that veteran purchasing marijuana in Texas could face jail time and a conviction and a record that they then have to explain to future employers and friends and everyone else, because that's public information right now. So making marijuana legal for consenting adults, regulating its sale, controlling it so it doesn't get in the hands of minors, taxing it so that we get the income and can drive that into some of the priorities that we have as a state, makes all the sense in the world to me. If we cannot get that done with the legislature, I know that we can expand the Texas Compassionate Use Program to cover at least every single veteran who's served in this state. So that's the second thing that we can do to address mental health care. And the last one is one that I'm also excited about, and these are the veterans courts that we see across the state of Texas. You're a veteran, you've just served this country. In fact, maybe you just came back yesterday from your deployment and you get in trouble with the law. Maybe it is a DUI, maybe it's a substance abuse issue, maybe it's something related to mental health. I don't want you to go to prison. I don't want you to go to jail. I don't want you to go through the normal criminal justice program. I want you to go to a veterans court, very often presided over by a judge who himself or herself is a veteran as well and knows what you have been through and diverts you from the prison system into treatment or into training or into something that allows you to get your feet back under you so that you can move forward in your life. Those three things right there, using the state agencies, making marijuana legal, and having diversionary court programs, that's going to help a lot of veterans who are struggling with mental health issues right now. The third and last big idea that I want to lay on you before I turn the microphone over to you so that I can listen to you is this one. For the current generation of veteran who has just come back over the last 10 years, maybe just came back this week, many of them were exposed to toxic burn pits in Iraq and Afghanistan. And many of you may know what this is, but for those who don't, this is where our government has burned waste, trash, plastic, body parts, medications, toxins, anything that we want to dispose of, indiscriminately burned and then inhaled accidentally and not on purpose by those who are stationed near those burn pits, who then come back to Abilene, to El Paso, or to the state of Texas, complaining of symptoms including diminished lung capacity, cancers that do not make sense based on their medical history or their genealogy, things that otherwise are directly related to what they were exposed to overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan. This government, our federal government thus far, has really denied any responsibility or ownership for this, much as they did for the Vietnam era for 40 years, until exposure to Agent Orange was treated as a presumptive condition when you went into the VA to get that care. 40 years, 4 decades before we did the right thing on Agent Orange. I want to make sure that we do the right thing right now on toxic burn pit exposure while these veterans still have so much of their lives left to live. So again, 3 things that we can do here to make this right. Number 1, we have to set up and fully fund a burn pit registry here in the state of Texas so we can keep track of all these veterans no matter where they move or where they live, to connect them with the care that will be available soon from the federal government. Point number 2, there's a federal bill called the PACT Act that'll make sure that the federal government fully funds the recovery, the treatment, and the care for these veterans. We match that with that registry, and we get every single veteran connected to that. But I want to make sure that we use the full weight and strength and leverage of the state of Texas to push that legislation through. And then third, we've got a lot of returning veterans who work for the state of Texas right now, but who are not allowed to make accommodations for their exposure and for their disability related to those toxic burn pits. We want to make sure, and I'll do this as governor, that any state agency that you work for, we make the accommodations so that you can continue to earn a paycheck, serve the people of Texas, but not further harm yourself while you are employed by us. Those 3 things are going to help this current generation of veterans coming back and make sure that we do right by and for each one of them. Now listen, there are a number of other issues that I wanted to bring up. I wanted to talk about women veterans and the fact that they don't get the care commensurate with their service, because we still have a VA that is wired and geared for men, because by and large that was the majority of those who were serving in the wars of the past. And I've heard from far too many women that we need to do a better job in making sure that they are prioritized within this system. And I think through TVC we can do that. There's also those members of the National Guard, 10,000 of whom were involuntarily activated over the last year and sent down to the border with a week's notice to tell their families, their kids, and their employer that they were going to be leaving for a year. 7 of them have lost their lives so far. And all of them that I have spoken to and listened to so far say that they want to come home. This is not what they signed up for. This is not a real emergency. This is political theater in the state of Texas, more focused on somebody's re-election than on a real crisis or problem that we have at the border. I want to make sure that we address that one as well. But lastly, I just laid a bunch of stuff on you, all focused on veterans issues. There's a lot more that we can talk about in the state of Texas. If you have a question about something else, though I want to focus on veterans today, I welcome you to ask that as well. We do not get to Abilene, Texas often enough, and I want to make sure that I have the chance to listen to you on those issues. As Cynthia gets ready to recognize the first person who has a question, I'll just add this. We just held a similar meeting in San Angelo. It was terrific, wonderful conversation. As we were driving into Abilene, it really overwhelmed us to see the damage done by this mesquite wildfire. The homes where we could just see literally the mantle place of the fireplace, the cattle that were up on their backs, feet in the air, that were dead along the side of the road. I know that we are still fighting this fire here in this community. We are going to get out to our 2.1 million followers on Twitter and every other social media platform, the best resources where people can donate to help the people of Abilene. But I just want you to know we are with you. And we know this is really tough on a lot of families in this area, really tough for the entire community. I've reached out to the mayor, to the city manager, to the mayor pro tem to offer our assistance. I didn't want to gather tonight without mentioning this and letting you all know that we are with you at this moment. So anyhow, we wish you all the best. Thank you for coming out. Cynthia?
All right, if you have a question, please raise your hand and I will make my way to you. We have our first question over here. Will you all pass this back?
Thank you for coming out.
Thank you for being here. I am, my husband's a veteran, so I appreciate all your words. I'm a teacher here in town, and I am worried that the other side with their school vouchers, that it's not going to be good for education. Can you please tell me what you are going to do for education and teachers?
Thank you for asking. Listen, so true and funny story. When I was in San Angelo, someone took the microphone, stood up and said, "Beto, I was your substitute teacher when you were 16 years old." And she said, "I want to tell everyone here just what you were like when you were 16. I just started to sweat, and I was like, "Oh, what is she going to say?" She actually said some very nice things, which was very sweet of her. But I think about her, I think about you, and I think about the people who make the difference for us when we're at this young, vulnerable age where we're still being formed. And the teachers who helped me to believe in myself and to want to do more in my life, and really gave me that faith and that confidence, as well as helping me to learn how to read and to write and to add up numbers. And I would say after these 2 years of the pandemic, these educators and counselors and librarians and nurses, they're literally keeping these kids alive. I mean, these kids have lost a grandparent in the pandemic. Their folks might have lost their job. They may have lost their home. They're going through trauma that I can only imagine what that would be like for me at that age, 13, 14 years old. And so they're really a lifeline for these kids. And I just say all that to just underscore how important these educators are to the state of Texas right now and to our children. And we are grossly underpaying them and disrespecting them in this state. Teachers in Texas, on average, are underpaid by about $7,500 a year against the teachers nationally on average. Not to get to the best of the best, to the highest paid, to the most expensive, just to get to average across America, we're $7,500 per year down. If you're a retired teacher, you can tell me better than I can tell you, but since 2004, you have not received a cost of living adjustment. Imagine how much costs have gone up just over the last 8 months, much less the last 18 years in this state. People are struggling on a fixed income to make ends meet after giving the best years of their lives to this state, and this is the way we're treating them. And then this STAR test. My youngest Henry, who's in 5th grade, yesterday just had 3 of his STAR tests, right? And going into that, he's anxious and nervous because his teacher is anxious and nervous because a huge part of her assessment depends on how my son does on that STAR test. Almost no other state places this kind of premium on a high-stakes, standardized test that doesn't do anything really to measure the effort put forth by that teacher or the prospect of that kid and his potential in that classroom, and does nothing except make the test-making companies very wealthy in the state. If I were governor, I would end the STAR test this year, and I would listen to you. I'd listen to you and other educators and replace that with something that's closer to a true diagnostic. Where do we have problems? Where can we send in help? Right now, the STAR is used as a punitive tool, and it just makes no sense. And folks, we're losing teachers by the thousands in the state of Texas. That Henry that I just talked about, who's about to finish his school year, here we are in May. His year began in August. He has yet to have a permanent classroom teacher. It's been one substitute after another. God bless the substitutes, but he's not getting that continuity and that connection that he'd otherwise have with a permanent classroom teacher. So how do we recruit and retain the best of the best? We treat them with the respect that they're owed and that they deserve. And as governor, that's what we'll do. Thank you for asking the question. Thank you for teaching.
We're straight back in the room.
Hello. So a topic that's been real big everywhere lately has been women's reproductive rights and the attacks on it. So what would your plans be to help protect our women's reproductive rights?
As governor in Texas, every woman will make her own decisions about her own body and her own future. It's the law of the land. It should be the law of the land here in Texas. And for those who doubt whether or not Texas can get this done, given the fact that our current governor has signed a bill that outlaws abortion, it's a trigger bill that if this draft Supreme Court decision becomes law, will go into effect, and it will criminalize abortion beginning at conception with no exception for rape or for incest. And you may wonder, how are we going to overcome that right here in the state of Texas? I'll just remind everybody that in the year before Roe versus Wade was decided, abortion was also illegal and outlawed and criminalized in the state of Texas. And it wasn't anyone from outside of the state who helped the women in the state. It was the women of this state who helped themselves, including Jane Roe of Roe versus Wade, and her two attorneys, one of whom was from right here in Abilene, Texas, Sarah Weddington. Linda Coffey, who lives in Dallas, Texas. These three women were able to plead a case before an all-male United States Supreme Court and ensure that for at least the last 49 years, a half century, that right to privacy and for you and anyone else to make their own decisions was enshrined as part of our constitutional protection. So we can do this, but I'll just be straight with you. The only way we're going to get this done is by winning political power. It will not be another decision from the Supreme Court. We know the direction they're going in. It won't be the Congress, and you know what? We have a majority of Democrats in the House and the Senate, a Democrat in the White House. They all purport to believe in this right, and yet with the power to actually do something about it, they have yet to come through. And I'm not going to hold my breath. This one is on all of us in the state of Texas, but I'm confident that we can get this done. University of Texas polled this issue for whatever value polls retain in this state, in this age anymore. And they found that only 20% of our fellow Texans agree with the governor on an all-out abortion ban. 80%, that's the majority of us, Republicans, Democrats, independents alike, believe in that constitutional protection that's been the law of the land for the last 49 years. So you have my commitment on that. It sounds like I've got yours. We need to make sure that we listen to and talk with our fellow Texans about the stakes of this election and just how important it is. Thank you for asking the question, for being here. Appreciate it.
Welcome back, Joe.
Thank you.
Come back to see us again. And one thing you're going to find about veterans is they've nearly all got that protective gene. It's in their DNA, and they want to make sure that their family's taken care of. And we appreciate your proposals for VA reform and all, but along with that, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but expanded Medicaid. We want to make sure that our families are taken care of. And the current resident down in Austin's not going to get that done. And if there's anybody here today that's riding the rail on how they're going to vote, you got to vote veto, because that's the only way this is going to get done.
Thank you for that. The gentleman's absolutely correct about this Medicaid issue. And lest you think this is a Democratic plan or that would somehow only help Democrats, first of all, we're the outlier in America for not accepting Medicaid expansion. And I know you all probably know your history on this, but Medicaid came from the state of Texas in the first place. It was Lyndon Baines Johnson who in the summer of 1965 signed Medicaid into law. And those Medicaid expansion dollars, where the federal government says we'll pay 90 cents on the dollar of expansion, that's really your dollars that you send up to DC in your federal income taxes that would come back to us. But right now, they're going to California, Oklahoma, Louisiana. In fact, every one of our border states, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico, 3 of them with Republican governors, chose to expand Medicaid. Because in our case, it brings in $10 billion a year. We use that to hire doctors, mental health care providers in a state whose largest provider of mental health care right now is the county jail system. We do it to lower our property taxes because when that person who's going to die of diabetes and cannot afford insulin because they're not eligible for Medicaid, because we have not expanded it, finally their suffering is going to become too much. And they'll take themselves to the hospital, where the outcome will not be as good as it would have been if they'd been able to treat it, and the expense will be exponentially greater. And though they don't have a dime to their name, that bill does not go away. We all end up paying it in higher county property taxes or higher premiums on our insurance bill. This is as close to a no-brainer as you get to in the state of Texas. And I know for a fact that there is the critical number of Republicans in the legislature who will vote for this along with just about every single Democrat. The only people standing in our way are the leaders at the very top of the political pyramid in the state of Texas right now. So, as the gentleman said, if this issue matters to you, I think it matters to all of us, whether it's health care, whether it's your property taxes, whether it's getting your federal income taxes back into this state, we've got to win this election. We've got to send people like Linda into the House of Representatives so we have a majority there who will do the right thing. And we've got to remember, everything that we're talking about here today is consensus, is unifying, is healing the divisions. Being there for veterans, expanding Medicaid, getting behind world-class public school educators. These aren't the culture war issues that Greg Abbott has chosen. These aren't the lines of division by which he wants to define the state. This is who we are at our best, right? And we are going to do it. So please share, not just with your Democratic friends, but with your Republican and independent friends as well. We have a way to get past this infighting and this division and make sure that we do the right thing. Thank you for asking the question.
Hi, hey, Blake Norvell here, and here's my question for you. And this goes back to over this terrible pandemic we've had. You know, over the past 2 years, at the height of this pandemic, we've seen a lot of injury and death and sadness inflicted on a lot of families. But throughout this pandemic, couldn't help but notice that a lot of Republican governors very much opposed restrictions. You know, they didn't want mask mandates, they didn't want to do social distancing, spacing. Big difference between the red states and the blue states on pandemic safety measures. But now, when we turn around and it comes to Title 42 and deportation, these same Republican governors that say the pandemic's over, we don't need restrictions, it's really not that big of a deal, they're suddenly saying when it comes to illegal immigrants, the pandemic is very serious, it's deadly, and we have to deport people who come here immediately. So I want to get your thoughts and feeling on the standards. When it comes to the citizens in their states, the pandemic's over, no big deal, don't worry about it, don't wear a mask, go to parties, have a good time, get your life back to normal. But when it comes to people who come here and cross the border, as we'll just use the word, their term, illegally, or to use their term, illegal aliens, their attitude is we need immediate deportation. This is a public health danger. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on the contrast there and how you feel about that, and just get your thought on that double standard. You know, and I guess I'm referencing the recent district court ruling that I think came down there in Louisiana, where a Republican governor had argued for instant deportation based on COVID safety standards. And the government shouldn't be able to repeal the emergency order, but when it comes to citizens of their own state COVID's gone, it's in the past, no big deal. So I guess I want to get your thought on that issue and what's really motivating these Republican governors. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. This is, I'm going to try to do this question justice. It's such a good one, but it involves something that has not gotten better. In fact, has gotten worse over time because we treat it so glibly. We sloganeer about it without really getting to the solutions. In fact, it's defined more by the stunts that people have employed than by the solutions that they have pursued. So when we talk about the border, let's acknowledge, and I live on the border, and Amy and I are raising 3 kids on the border in El Paso, Texas. So we've lived this, we understand it. We have some real challenges on the border. There are people who bring in illegal drugs like fentanyl that are killing people in this country and even in this community. There are those who would smuggle human beings, traffic in human beings, and that's a grave danger. There are those who are coming, as the gentleman suggests, fleeing persecution, brutality, or death in their home countries, petitioning for asylum and refuge in this one. And we want to make sure that we do right by them and by our own laws, right? And then there are those who want to follow the rule of law, to come here to work a job, maybe a job that our kids might not want to work. They may not want to pick cotton in a field or fix fence on a ranch or work in a slaughterhouse. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But I know a lot of immigrants who would come here for the pleasure of doing this work here in the United States of America, but want to find a legal path to be able to do that. So 4 different really big challenges that we have at the border, and right now we have a governor who is spending $5 billion a year activating that guard, which has no arrest or detention powers on the border, constructing a wall. It doesn't matter how high or whether you put alligators in the moat, concertina wire, you're not going to keep out those 4 pressures on our border right now. You have a president who, though I think he's trying to do the right thing, has not been very clear about what these solutions are, and for my taste as a Texan and a border resident, has not made this enough of a priority. So here is what I propose that we do. Get away from the stunts, putting immigrants on buses and sending them to DC, activating the guard, creating all this chaos on the border, and get to solutions. First, let's make sure that we're focusing on the real threats. If we're focused on these border walls and this automatic turn back under Title 42, which says whether you're a drug smuggler, a human trafficker, an asylum seeker, we're going to treat you the same way. You approach one of our Border Patrol agents, we're just turning you around and sending you back into Mexico. Now what that means is if it's somebody who means to do us harm, we weren't able to apprehend them, capture them, prosecute them, and make sure that they no longer harm us. If it was an asylum seeker who has a legitimate claim for asylum, we're treating them in the same way. And in both cases, they are free to try to cross again the next day. That's not just me saying it, that's the Border Patrol agents on the border that I have listened to. So if we dispense with the theatrics and focus on the real problems, we're going to catch more of those drug and human traffickers and smugglers, and we're going to do a better job of honoring our commitment to the asylum seekers. Second thing that I think we need to do is we need to use our position as the defining border and immigrant state in this country and come up with solutions that we present to Washington, D.C. to address the issues in the home country that would cause somebody to flee 2,000 miles up the length of the Americas. Now, for those of you with kids or who've had kids, imagine what it would take for you to send your 13-year-old daughter on a 2,000-mile journey in the hands of a smuggler or on her own or with her older cousin. You wouldn't do it for kicks. You wouldn't do it so she could steal someone's job or place in a school or get health care or anything else that they're trying to tell you she's trying to do. You would do it if that were the only way to save your daughter's life. I have a 13-year-old daughter at home, and I know that's the only thing that would compel me to send her on that journey, is if she would be dead, if she would remain in El Paso. So we can either meet her at our border 2,000 miles later, or push this country to address the underlying issues in El Salvador, in Honduras, and in Guatemala. That would go a long way towards getting this right. And then the last thing, and another chance for Texas to lead, and this is something that I want to do as governor, is we should ensure that those who come to this country follow our law, but we should also make sure that this country rewrites its laws to truly reflect our values, our needs, and our priorities. As I listen to my fellow Texans, they say we need a more robust guest worker program. When I'm in a place like La Mesa and listening to a cotton grower, he says, You know, my own kids will not work in this field. I can't find anybody who grew up in La Vista to work here. But these immigrants, if I did not have them, I would go out of business. Cynthia, yesterday in San Antonio, we met a roofer who said the same thing. He said every single guy who's carrying 40 pounds of shingles on his back up on this hot roof in 103-degree heat, he's an immigrant who has really killed himself to come to this country and do the toughest, most back-breaking work in the world. Let's make sure there is a legal path to do that. Republicans, Democrats alike can agree. If you want to join your family and they're here in the United States and you live in Mexico, it's a 20-year wait time if you want to do it legally and get in the back of the line. That provides an incentive for people to cut that line and move in between ports of entry. Let's lift those visa caps a little bit higher. Let's cut down the wait time on that line. And then last thing, let's hire more immigration judges and asylum application officers so that we speed the process. Right now you're waiting 5 years to have your asylum case heard in this country. You may be cooling your heels right here in Abilene for 5 years. You may be doing that in Ciudad Juarez under the Migrant Protection Protocol. But either way, this is not working to the benefit of this country, and it certainly is not fair for that person who has no other place to go. So I apologize for the very long answer. But I think that we are victims of those who look for the short-term solutions and the catchphrases and the build the wall and the things that people can cheer around, but have yet to make us safer or improve this process. Thank you for asking the question. Gracias.
We're in the back,
Thank you, Ms.
so
Colonel.
we have time for 2 more.
Howdy, Betta.
Hey there.
Okay, one thing I want to say is you're my hero, you rock.
Thank
Well,
you.
I'm pursuing a law degree, so I want to grow up and be just like you. So, and one thing that drives me in order to get my degree, in order to do what I can, is that environmental policy sucks. So what I want to know is, what are you going to do to help us from not freezing like we did 2 years ago, and then this year not burning up? Because things are just getting worse, and we got to do something about it.
That's right. That's right. I mean, before last year, who would have thought that in the energy capital of the world, we wouldn't be able to keep the lights on, or the heat running, or the water flowing in our homes? Those pipes froze up and then they burst. And then they did tens of billions of dollars of damage to the homes and businesses and properties across the state of Texas. Hundreds of billions of dollars of damage across the state and to our economy. There were some, though, who did okay. Over 5 days last February, some energy companies and their CEOs made $11 billion in profit. Our sitting governor pegged the price of gas 200 times its going rate and just kept it up there and said, make all the profits that you want to make, and forced local utilities to pay 200 times, forcing many of them into bankruptcy, taking on billions of dollars of debt. The story does not end there, because they passed that bill onto every single one of us. And right now, on average, the Texans' utility bills have gone up $50 a month per household every single month. And they'll go up every single month for the next 20 years. That's how long it's going to take to pay this back. Ron Nirenberg, who's the mayor of San Antonio, has called this the largest transfer of wealth in Texas history. Taking the money from all of us, homeowners and renters, and sending it to those corporations and to those billionaires, who then turn around and cut Greg Abbott $1 million campaign contribution checks. And in the midst of all this, 700 people lost their lives, froze to death. A 75-year-old Vietnam-era veteran who couldn't charge his oxygen tank in his house, took it out to his truck to do that. They found him dead of hypothermia the next day. That happened right here in the state of Texas. And if you were not paying attention last week, and for some reason they decided to release the news at 5 p.m. on a Friday, we learned that 6 power plants tripped offline. We do not have the capacity in the state of Texas to meet the demands that we have. They asked all of us to set our thermostats at 78 degrees. And I want to thank whoever set the thermostat here, because it feels like about 78 degrees right now. This is what that feels like. Now, if everything were okay with the grid, why would your government be asking you to set your thermostat to 78 degrees here in the state of Texas when it's 103 degrees outside? They do that because we have yet to fix the grid. The question was, what are we going to do to fix this? Okay, we weatherize and winterize every part of the grid, including the gas supply. Last February, gas froze, literally froze at the wellhead. You can't get it to the generators when it's frozen there. You need to weatherize and winterize, just like they do in the other states in this country. Number two, we need to connect ERCOT, which is our grid, with the national grid so that we can draw down power when we need it. And we're all capitalists in this state, and we like to make money. So the other side of this is that when we're producing more power than we can consume, we can sell that power back on to the national grid and have that money and those jobs come right back here to the state of Texas. We need to claw back that $11 billion that was stolen from us, turn it back over to the ratepayer to bring your utility bills down, and then we need to have an independent market monitor. It's kind of like having a cop on the beat to make sure that gas traders can never overcharge times 200 again and force utilities into bankruptcy. Those 4 common sense steps are agreed upon by most Texans. The only people who do not like it are the governor's biggest donors, because it cuts into their profits and their ability to price gouge us during a disaster. So we should be able to count on the grid in the state of Texas. When I'm governor, we will do that. Thanks for asking the question. Appreciate it.
In the center, all the way to the back.
Thank you, Ms. Connors.
Hey Beto, welcome back to Abilene. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
With the terrorist attack that happened a week ago in Buffalo, with the shooting that happened there, and then, I mean, if you think about 3 years ago in El Paso, the same thing happening there. Gun violence in America just seems to be getting worse and worse. And in a state like Texas, we love our guns. It's, you know that. Everyone in here knows that. But there has to be some common sense. There has to be some common sense when it comes to gun laws, because the violence is just getting out of control. And with the country opening back up after the pandemic, I feel like it's just going to get worse and worse. We're going to start hearing about this more and more as the country starts to open up. What are your ideas? What do you think we can do to kind of get this under control, to kind of get everyone on board on some of these common sense gun laws that we know that should be out there, but just keep getting pushed back from the other side?
Thank you for asking the question. You know, I also could not help but think about El Paso when I saw the horrifying news out of Buffalo. Very similar set of circumstances. If you all remember, in 2019, a guy from Allen, Texas, from North Texas, drove 600 miles to El Paso with an AK-47, which is a weapon originally designed, engineered, and sold to militaries for use on battlefields. It's just really good at killing people. That's what it is made to do. This guy who heard about this invasion, to the gentleman's question earlier, of immigrants and Mexicans coming into this country, and also was told that he was going to be replaced as a white man in his own state. He came to repel that invasion that he'd heard about and take it on terms of war, which is what those in positions of power had been using to describe it. Killed 23 people. The guy in Buffalo who killed so many there, same deal. He said, as a white man, I'm going to be replaced in this country. I'm going to take matters into my own hands and use this AR-15, this weapon originally designed for use in war. You see enough of these, and as you just said, then you can begin to see the pattern going forward. And we opened up this conversation today talking about democracy. And I mentioned how exceptional it is that we can peacefully, nonviolent, freely and fairly choose those who will represent us and the direction that our country will take. When folks stop believing in democracy and quote unquote take matters into their own hands, you get this kind of terrorism and political violence that we're seeing. I think we are fools to believe anything other than that these weapons of war will continue to be used with greater frequency against our fellow Americans. It's why I've taken the position that I don't think we should have AR-15s and AK-47s in civilian life. They belong on a battlefield, used by armies. Maybe we can, maybe we can't find consensus and common ground on that. But here's a place where I think we can. A month after the El Paso shootings, in Midland, Odessa, a gentleman went into a licensed arms dealer to try to buy an AR-15, and he couldn't pass the background check. So he left and went to a private seller and bought that same weapon out of that guy's trunk and used it to kill 8 people in Midland, Odessa. In one instance, he shot a baby girl in the face. She luckily survived, believe it or not, but 8 other people did not. If we had universal background checks, where no matter if you buy it from a licensed gun dealer or a private seller, you got to go through that background check, we could have stopped that shooting. If we had a safe storage law, which says, look, have all the guns that you want. Use them to shoot, to hunt, for sport, for self-defense. None of my business, right? But just keep them locked up in your house if you have little kids around, because how often have we read the stories of kids who find their parents' gun and turn it on themselves or their baby brother or baby sister, or take it into the schoolhouse and shoot somebody, as somebody did in Santa Fe High School back in 2018. And one of the mothers of one of those girls who lost her life in that shooting came up with a safe storage law. She's a gun owner. She's an Army veteran at that. She's voted for Democrats and Republicans over the course of her life. It just makes common sense. We may not agree on everything when it comes to Second Amendment issues, but I bet you we can agree on universal background checks, safe storage laws, other common sense provisions that will protect the Second Amendment while also doing a better job of protecting the lives of the people in our community. And last thing that I'll tell you, as you suggested, as a 4th generation Texan, I grew up with firearms in the household and grew up learning how to use them. My Uncle Raymond, who was a sheriff's deputy, was the one who taught me and my sisters. He got the sharpshooter award from from the El Paso County Jail. That was his pride and joy. But he taught us the responsibility of owning that firearm. That's who we are. That's the proud tradition of gun ownership in Texas. It is not, this will be my last point, it is not what our current governor has done. In the wake of Sutherland Springs, El Paso, Midland, Odessa, Santa Fe High School, he has only made it easier for violent criminals to get their hands on firearms, including signing into law permitless carry, which says that anyone can carry a gun in public now without a license, without a background check, without any training whatsoever. I, and probably most people here, were good with license to carry. You can carry that gun in public. I just want to make sure that you're not going to use it against me, against yourself, and that you know how to use it in the first place. Now there are none of those considerations or restrictions. And over the last 5 years, before the governor signed this into law, 35,000 licenses to carry a firearm were denied by law enforcement in the state of Texas because the people applying were deemed too dangerous to themselves or to those in their lives to be entrusted with a gun in public. Now all 35,000 of them are carrying guns on our streets, as are the tens of thousands who knew better than to ever apply for a license to carry because they never would have passed the background check in the first place. That is dangerous for Texas, and I'll just give you the proof. More members of law enforcement have been gunned down in this state than any other state in the union, and since signing that into law, we've seen an incredible spike in gun violence in the state of Texas. We're Texans, we get this, we understand it, we can protect the Second Amendment and save the lives of our fellow Texans at the same time. Thank you for the question, appreciate it.
Okay, we have one more comment from Claudine right here.
Hello everyone, and thank you all so much. Beto, it's always a pleasure to hear you speak. And I know, and many of us know, that you are the man to take Texas into the direction that we're going, growth and unification. So thank you so much for being here. And it's just a pleasure for me to work alongside you and your team. And in honor of the People's Plaza, where you all are currently sitting, this is a place for everyone. And the owner, Sean David, and our podcast, which is the Abilene Urban Connection, we offer you guys free food outside. It's for our veterans. It has been cooked fresh today by Clark's Catering. And so if you are a veteran, please let our veterans eat first, okay? So if you are a veteran and you don't want to go home and cook, you walk out to the right here. There's chicken, there's beans, there's corn. We just wanted to make sure you all had a hot meal today. And again, on behalf of Beto, the People's Plaza, if you guys, just continue to support Beto. So pay it forward, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Claudine. Thank you, everybody. Oh, Cynthia just reminded me, I want to just remind everyone of this before I remind them of what you just shared with me. We wanted everyone to be here who's here, We are grateful for those who are supporters of ours, who will be voting with us, who are volunteering with us. We're also grateful for those who may not vote for us, who may vote for Greg Abbott, who just came here to listen and participate in the conversation. Again, if we're really a democracy, that means we're about everyone being a part of the conversation. So this next announcement, no one's under any compulsion to follow it, but if you are a supporter of ours, we are looking for people who are willing to host block walks. So when we go out and meet our fellow Texans, knock on their doors, invite them into this next election, talk about what's at stake, the things that we can do for veterans that we outlined at the beginning of this meeting, expanding Medicaid, supporting our public school teachers, addressing issues at the Texas-Mexico border, whatever it is that brought you out here today, we need leaders in the community who would be willing to be the rally point where other volunteers can meet them at the park across from your house, at the coffee shop down the street, and then you gather and go knock on doors and go meet these voters and bring them into this election. Cynthia, what do you want those who are volunteering to do this to do?
So if you guys look in the back of the room, Aaron, who is one of our amazing volunteers, he has a clipboard. He's waving it in the air by the table. If you go to him, he will sign you up, and we would love for somebody to please, a few of you sign up. We really need hosts, and we need leaders in this community. So Aaron, he's waving again back there. Please make sure you have a chance to go visit with him.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you being here. Gracias.